I knew that there was prostitution, I knew that there was sometimes forced prostitution, I knew all this intellectually, but then in the 1990s I began to encounter some particular individuals who were imprisoned in brothels, and the brutality of what they were going through and the scale of it just blew me away.
I was amazed at how many men from all over the world come here. I just found it, I knew it was a problem, but when I actually saw it, I was shocked at how many men actually come from Western countries here and buy women who are in prostitution.
I overheard a conversation one time in a restaurant. It was a table right in front of me, and it was an older gentleman, and he was clearly from the States, and he was talking to, she must have been a brothel owner, and they were making a deal, and he was asking her questions: how young, what would they be wearing, all this stuff, and you see that time and time again, and it's hard to deal with.
It felt very much like 19th century slavery, except these girls were all dead of AIDS by their early 20s, and once I had met those people and they were real, it was very hard to walk away from that issue.
The men who come here for the Thai women are looking for a different type of woman. The Thai women are typically quite small. I think for some, there is definitely pedophilia involved. I've seen a man come into a bar and walk around the women who are on a stage dancing and look for the very youngest girl that he could find. And the girl that he wanted that night was about 15 years old. And I remember sitting there thinking, I wanted to say to him, because I felt quite upset because I saw him do that, you're a pedophile. And in your country, you're a pedophile, and I know you're a pedophile, but for him somehow he had justified that this was quite acceptable here in Thailand, and he was coming to find his next victim. And I think he somehow made himself feel better that he was doing it because of the way he was purchasing that girl. It wasn't like she was someone he stole on the street. He went into a legitimate bar and was gonna buy a girl there.
And you hear that within a lot of the Johns that are over there, where they'll come back and they'll hang out and they'll request the same woman, because it's not just a prostitute to them. You know, in the morning, a lot of times these women will do their laundry for them, and it's this kind of faux marriage, if you will.
You know, to give a girl money for the night, I've heard people say, well, they like what they do. That's a show. They may act like they like to entice you to be their customer, but it's the dollar that is the motivation behind that. But the heart pain and the soul pain is so much greater than any Band-Aid that giving someone a paycheck would do. It is devastating to a society. Another component that is like a push factor for women to be involved in prostitution is the family unit in Thailand is really in a state that needs a lot of healing. Statistics say that there's 60% of marriages end in divorce, and I've also heard that 80% of Thai men also go to women in prostitution, and they encourage early exploration for their sons to investigate sex, and they do that by taking their sons to women in prostitution when they're 12 to 15 years old. And that all plays a part to not really understanding the worth of women, and it just keeps the cycle going because it becomes a normal thing here in Thailand.
My aunt asked if I wanted to make money, good enough money to support my family, my child, and those taking care of my child. My aunt set me up in a massage parlor. At first I didn't know I had to have sex with the customers. But then my aunt told me that if I didn't have sex with them, I wasn't going to make any money. All I was thinking about was, how do I support my family and myself?
If a man comes here for sex tourism, he not only, brings money into the bars, but there's hotels and restaurants and tours across the country. And sometimes they take girls for more than a night, maybe a weekend or a week or a month as a companion. And when they do that, they're going on outings and they're buying things for the girls. So money is being poured into the economy through those different ways.
I think there's a misperception sometimes that the traffickers are basically evil people trying to do evil things. And essentially they are just ruthless business people. And you can make a little bit more money if you kidnap rural girls and lock them up in brothels than you can if you steal motorcycles. And in Cambodia in particular, I spent a lot of time with some of the brothel owners trying to understand their business model, their psychology. And one of the brothel owners in particular I spent a lot of time with, she's just a profit-maximizing businesswoman. And she found she could make a lot of money buying these rural girls and selling their virginity.
Each of the girls can do that's special. This girl does this well. Her job is to take care of the women, but also promote and advertise the girls' abilities. On some of the streets I'd work on, the customers would hardly ever give me money. They'd simply rate me. One time I had a pillow over my face. As the customer pressed down on it, he raped me. It was very scary.
As long as there is demand, there is going to be supply, and as long as women are responsible for caring for their families and not know that they're worth anything, they're going to make this kind of choice. But inside, it eats them up and makes them feel like they're worthless.
The more I reported, the more it confirmed my impression that this is one of the great human rights issues of our time.
I grew up in a rural area, very poor, no father, and lived with my grandmother and brothers. My mom had gone to Bangkok to work, so I really didn't get to see her until I was about 10 years old. At that time, my mother came back, but died shortly after of AIDS. I went to Bangkok when I was 14 years old to work. When I first came to Bangkok, I would sell papaya salad with my aunt. I got only 80 baht a day. That's less than $3. Then I got a job working in a factory. I had to do all of this under the radar. I was only 14, so my work had to be done in secret. I spent my life from 14 to 15 doing what normal teenagers do. Drinking, having boyfriends. I didn't pay much attention to what was happening to my family up country. I got pregnant when I was 15. My boyfriend was a drug dealer. And when my baby was born, he wasn't responsible. I had to work extra hard just to be able to take care of the baby. I was still trying to do two things, be a mother and a teenager who has to work. It was a very difficult time. I was embarrassed about what had happened, and I didn't even tell my grandmother. At times I would take medicine just to sleep. Sometimes I would take medicine trying to kill myself. It was that bad. Eventually I did take my child to be with my grandmother. All I was thinking about was how do I support my family and myself. I began to have some conflict with the customers because the MMXII was telling customers you can have sex with this girl without a condom. I was so afraid of having sex without a condom, with my mom dying of AIDS. I left and went out on my own. I didn't want to have a MMXII over me. Then I can control my situation a little bit better. I didn't really have a close relationship with the MMXII, but the rule of the MMXII is to tell the customers what each of the girls can do that's special. This girl does this well. Her job is to take care of the women, but also promote and advertise the girls' abilities. On some of the streets I'd work on, the customers would hardly ever give me money. They would just rate me. At first, not knowing the customer's language was a difficult thing. They're not all Thai people. Many of them are Middle East and former Soviet Union. Comes down to this. They are a customer, I give them service, it's just a job. People know this about Thailand, and that's why they come here. At MMXII, you have mostly Arabs. On the streets you have women as well as transvestite and transsexuals selling themselves to the tourists. But you will also find people selling goods, food, and household items. It's like a market, so all of that is mixed together. At that time in my life, I was making a lot of money, and I was very glad. I make good money, but I spend it very fast. There was actually a 2-year period where I was off the streets because there was a man from Turkey who brought me under his care. At that time, I was also taking lots of drugs. He took care of all my needs and expenses. I never knew what he was doing. I would ask him, but he would never tell me. Eventually, he was arrested because he had overstayed his visa. He was put in jail and I was forced to go back onto the streets. After I was with the man from Turkey, I was back on the streets, and it was terrible because I didn't have the customers that I had before. I had some African customers that would pay me or would pay me very little. They would rate me. I wasn't getting anything financially, at least enough. Once I was put into the bathroom and thrown into the shower, he was pouring water all over me. It doesn't do any good to tell the police because they wouldn't do anything. Since I'm selling services, the police wouldn't help me. When I was working in Soy 3, I didn't think about anything except, I've got to get money and take care of the family. So I'm on the street and I don't know how to pray, but I'm basically praying saying, God, if you're real, find me a job where I don't have to do this anymore.
Cambodia, we visited just to kind of get an idea. We actually visited some brothels, and I think one of the most kind of probably to this day, I think one of the most the hardest nights was when we visited this one brothel in Phnom Penh, and I remember being whisked through the door when we arrived. A school bell went off. That's when they alert all the girls that there's a visitor. And they open up these big kind of iron gates, and as soon as you enter in, you're locked. And the buildings look like just kind of a small shop, that someone would live in upstairs, but have their open business downstairs. And as we kind of walk through, you see kind of some women on the ground floor, and they're all watching TV, and they're obviously for sale. And as we got through, we started asking questions to see if they had younger women or younger girls, and it took some convincing, but sure enough they did. And on the second floor, as we walked up, we were invited by, literally it felt like we were walking into an elementary school of young girls. And that, it was a really, really hard night because there was one girl, and at the time it's hard, we estimate that she was maybe like 10, 12 years old. I remember she was kind of standing in the corner, kind of frightened, and she had kind of like these pajamas with flowers on them, just something that a young girl her age would wear. Very innocent, very quiet, and very scared. And she was with the mama-san in the corner of the room. Our goal that night at the time was to try to bring her out of the brothel and bring her back to this aftercare facility we were working with. And we spent a lot of time trying to convince them, but at the time they didn't want to let her go because she was most likely a virgin, and she was the youngest and would make them the most money, and so they don't want to let them leave for risk of her not coming back. So we left that night, and we left without her, and I remember feeling a lot of mixed emotions of just helplessness and this idea that my life back in America, I can walk by homeless people every day in the street, and I have a choice. I have a choice to stop, to ask them if they need anything. But this is the first time I really I felt helpless. I felt like I couldn't do anything. And we went back and we alerted the aftercare facility, the location, and I never really got a follow-up afterwards of what happened to her, but she's kind of been, in my mind, that girl that has kind of kept me going day after day. I think about her quite often, actually.
I met a woman, and she told me that I should go and apply for a job at a place called NightLight, which is what I did. This has been a part of answering every problem in my life.
NightLight exists to address the complex issues regarding human trafficking and prostitution. And the way they address those issues is by providing employment opportunities, skills training, unconditional love, counseling, daycare for women's children, and it really helps them get out of the sex industry and then to train them and help them to work through issues regarding the sex industry, abuse, abandonment, misunderstanding of love, over a long process, helping them with health care, how to raise, skills how to raise their children, and just giving them many, many opportunities that they would never have if they were not brought out of the sex industry.
I think it's really important that these women actually have skills. We want to give them opportunities to grow, to mature, to actually learn not only business skills, but to learn life skills as well. Those skills are transferable, and we think that's really important on their journey towards restoration.
I want you to know that even though I came to NightLight and got off the street, it didn't make my life easy. In fact, it caused a lot of misunderstandings. My family up country wants to know why I'm not sending all this money anymore. Things became a problem. It wasn't easy. It was very difficult. It was a sacrifice to make this change. But then, I did see that I have value and great worth. It doesn't mean that it's easy, but what I know now I didn't have before is hope.
We have a business that is called Biography, which employs survivors of the sex trade. And we've just launched our Biography Lab, is what we're calling it, which is a screen printing facility in Bangkok, where we have 4 survivors that are on staff and that we pay their salaries.
I love my work, and I love doing the screen printing for the t-shirts, because many of the t-shirts have a theme of anti-trafficking or a positive story about women who've been in bad situations before. It's hard work because I do the screening and my arms can get tired, but it's fun, and I know I'm sending out this message to a lot of people who are getting these t-shirts.
I know right now human trafficking, for example, is kind of like the pet project of the world, and it's wonderful because it is raising awareness and a lot of money is being given. But in a few years, when the world has moved to another project, that is still going to be going on. There's still going to be people on the ground who've been fighting for years to bring women out of this trap.
This is an issue that I'm pretty hopeful on, partly because I've seen the progress in Thailand, in Cambodia, even to some degree in India. It seems to me that, look, we're not going to wipe out all trafficking any more than we've wiped out murder or armed robbery, but that as we make this more a priority, and there's no doubt that this is becoming more of a priority, that traffickers are on the retreat, and that we are winning this war, and more than 150 years after emancipation, it's about time.
I just found out that I'm HIV positive. My first thought was of my mother, who died of it within 2 years. Though there's fear, my life is different. I live with hope. That's been the biggest change for me. I can have hope because God does have a plan for my life.
I really believe that you help one person at a time. Every person can make a difference. And let's say I helped one woman at NightLight, gave one woman hope. Well, she represents a family and a neighborhood and a community and eventually another place of employment. So my one little being the face of love, or an arm around someone, or just speaking to them in love and with compassion can transform their life and their children's lives and their community's lives and their workplace and generations to come.